Most boys grow up wanting to be like their fathers. So did I. I wanted to be just like my old man. I think it's when most boys hit their teens that things start to change. But not for me. I always wanted to be like my dad. Don't get me wrong, my old man was no saint. If I did something to make him angry, I could be sure I would get a whooping when he got home. And let me tell you, his beatings were no picnic. But I thought he was a fair guy. He was a hard worker. He was one of the greatest shoemakers in the village where my family comes from in Naples. He learned to make shoes from his dad, and his dad learned from his dad, and so on and so on and so on. But when my family got to this country, things were different. If you wanted to follow in your dad's footsteps, it was great, but you didn't have to. My old man, he could make a great pair of shoes in a single day. He was some craftsman. He used only the best material he could get his hands on. He taught me to use equipment as soon as I was old enough to hold a spoon. Within a few years, I found I could make a decent pair of shoes in a day or two. But it wasn't like what my old man could do. My shoes didn't have the sparkle or quality that his did. He was a true artist, but I was just a hack. I knew it even back then, but I had to give it a try for my father's sake. So I opened up this shop in the heart of Brooklyn, but it ended up just being a front. And soon I found that the business I worked so hard to build was going down the toilet. It was taking a toll on everything I did. My marriage was on the rocks, my personal life was a shambles, and then one day, almost by accident, everything ended up taking a totally different turn. By this time I had gambling debts. I owed this really scary guy a lot of money. Well, I had no way of paying him. My shoes weren't selling and the rent was months overdue. I was at my wit's end. My situation was growing desperate, but this guy that I owed money to seemed to have a soft spot for me and he offered me a way out. His name was Jerry the Thumb, obviously because he was good at putting the squeeze on people. You know, people who owed him money or people who double-crossed him. I knew what I was getting myself into. But all I had to do was do this guy one little favor and suddenly all my debts would be gone, almost as if by magic. Not for nothing, but of course I agreed. I would have been a moron not to. And from then on I was officially working with Jerry, doing him special favors whenever he needed them. But I hung on to my shop. I had to hide my new income somewhere, and the shoe shop seemed the perfect place. And suddenly business was booming and life was good again. My father's shoes could compete with the best of them. Ferragamo's, Bruno Mali, you name it. But my shoes, they served a different purpose. My shoes were for stoolies, rats, traders, for people who crossed somebody that was connected to the mob, or who owed Jerry the Thumb money and weren't making payments. Let me tell you, Jerry was tough, but he was fair. He always gave people a chance to make good on their debts. But when it was clear they had no intention of doing the right thing, that's when things got serious. Only the worst of the worst ended up in that kind of trouble. Nobody that had any kind of integrity ever ended up wearing my kind of shoes, but often enough someone did. And when a situation arose where someone in a position of authority needed my services, it was up to me to get it done. Now, I never killed nobody, that's not what I did. But when somebody from the top needed somebody to disappear, that's when they called me. By the time the job got to me, the individual in question was usually deceased already. For all my years, I worked with a driver named Mario. He could drive a car like nobody's business. He could get out of the craziest of situations. And he could outrun anyone who thought to pursue us. And basically, once we had our stiff, once the hitman did his thing, it was up to me to fit him with shoes, and it was up to Mario and me to take the unlucky bastard for a ride, the last ride of his life. Usually we'd go out to Long Island, out to where there were a lot of marshy areas. And after the cement shoes I made for our stiff was set, we would send him down to Davy Jones's locker, down to a watery grave for an eternity, never to be seen or heard from again, where all the stoolies, deadbeats, scumbags, and traitors in my line of work ended up. In my field, footwear took on new meaning. The chains and cement weighed down the skulls, and Mother Nature did the rest. My shoes had nothing to do with style or aesthetics. It was a business thing, it was a living, but those days are gone now. I sold the shop a few years ago. I had a good 20-year run. Bought a house, put the kids through college, never got pegged by the cops. Now my wife and I spend our days quietly. Time comes for everybody when you have to retire. Make way for the new generation. Mario retired too. He lives down in Florida somewhere. I get a postcard from him every now and again. I think back on the old times when I do. I never did get as good as my old man at making traditional shoes, but I did pretty well on my own. I built a reputation over the years for doing what I did, and that means something. My colleagues call me Mr. Shoemaker. Mr. Shoemaker. That's not my name, though. People have been calling me Handsome Frank Casanova for as long as I can remember. Now, I don't know so much about the handsome part, but I do know I worked hard to get where I got as a shoemaker for the mob. And in my line of work, that kind of respect means something.